Hi, I'm Dr. Caroline Leaf and welcome to my podcast, Cleaning Up the Mental Mess. Well, in today's podcast, I'm going to be talking about 6 ways to develop your child's self-esteem but not breed narcissism. We hear just so much about narcissism all over the place, and I think it's really important that we, as parents, recognize that we can actually, by the kinds of things that we say and how we bring our children up, we can unintentionally breed narcissism when we try to build their self-esteem. So I want to try and unpack 6 ways that we can, as parents, make sure that we are developing a child's self-esteem but not breeding narcissism. But before we begin, I want to talk to you about my new book coming out on August 8 called How to Help Your Child Clean Up Their Mental Mess, a guide to building resilience and managing mental health. And boy, am I excited about this. This is honestly the product of the 38 years of being in this field. When I practiced clinically, I had so many young patients from the age of 2 all the way through all ages, but my youngest were 2 and 3 years of age. I'm a mother of 4. My children are all adults now. And I tell you, this is filled with not only my own personal experience as a parent, but also all my clinical experience, plus clinical research. It's simple, it's easy to use, it's what you've been asking me for. How do I help my child manage anxiety, depression, deal with trauma, deal with bullying, deal with those social things that can happen, build their identity, all these things that are so hard as parents, dealing with parent guilt, how to help yourself to help your child. It's filled with all kinds of little images. I've created this little image called Brainy. I actually created him 25 years ago, and I had a Disney artist draw him up 25 years ago, and now what I've had done is updated Brainy and with a new artist who's brilliant, and we've got all these scenarios of Brainy throughout the book to help you and your child on this mental health journey. So I've even got a toy, so you can even get the toy. So your child, you have the book, you can show all the images to your child, and then we have our little superhero Brainy that helps us walk the mental health journey with our children. And even to make it even easier, we have a coloring book, which is color with Brainy and Friends, and there's Brainy and Friends, and you can color in. There's all kinds of great scenarios, once again, with Brainy, and just showing different scenarios where what's really cool about this book too is, like, I'll have the title like hugging Brainy, feeling happy, affectionate, excited. So there's all kinds of scenarios, and they can color in, they can refer back to this, they could cut these out. You can draw and write like little things over here as maybe you're dealing with something with your child, and this coloring this in has helped them to activate whatever that is that they're working on, and then they can fill in little, more drawings here, or you could make some notes, or they could write words, or whatever the case may be. So here's your mental health toolkit for your child to help you help your child manage their mental mess, which couldn't come sooner because, as you know, we have such a crisis with mental health, and it really boils down to how we are teaching our kids how to manage their mental health. If we give them the message that they are fragile and that they're a broken brain, we pretty much don't develop their resilience, nor do we develop their psychological immunity. I'm trying to get Brainy to sit still here so that you can see him while I'm talking. So we really need to be giving our children the tools to be able to tell their story, to recognize and validate and tell them it's okay to be a mess. And it's okay to be a messy parent, and it's okay to be a messy in life, because life is messy. But we've got to manage that mess. So we don't want to label and medicate. We want to free our children and empower them to manage what has happened and what will happen, because it's inevitable. That stuff is going to happen, as we know. So back to today's podcast. So how can we make sure we are developing self-esteem and not narcissism? And I think this is so important. Okay, so I've got 6 points that I'm going to make, but I just want to, introduce this topic, because what really stimulated this decision to do this podcast was a post by Adam Grant, and he comments there. He makes a great suggestion there. He puts a great statement down where he says in his post, we should rather say things like, "You are special to me," not "You deserve special treatment." And that really triggered that. The thinking in me that this is really important, how we say things to our children, the kind of messages that we give them. They're gonna wire those into their brain and their body and their mind, and they're forming how they are viewing themselves and how this is going to play out into the world. And so, without making parenting even more difficult, but it is difficult. I'm trying to help make it easier so that we can practice having little statements and things to help us to make sure we kind of doing this the right way. And obviously on the way, we will get messy. I already did one past podcast on messy parenting, and I'm going to do another one on because I think it's so important. But let's see how we can handle this narcissism versus, to that word, it's hard to say, versus self-esteem. And another thing that stimulated me, besides Adam Grant's post, was also an article I read in the Washington Post, about a study that was done in a peer-reviewed journal, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, a peer-reviewed U.S. journal, and it was a very interesting study. And it's basically the summary of the study was that parents who praise children too much may encourage narcissism. So when we overpraise a child, we may be encouraging narcissism. Now, I'm not saying, and nor is the study saying that we shouldn't praise our children. Gosh, I still praise my children, and we need to. But if it's too much or done in the incorrect way, it can have the opposite objective. These researchers followed more than 500 children, and they say that parental warmth, how warm you are towards your child, that empathy, and I did a whole podcast on, being warm and empathic with your child, which I recommend you listen to, is a better strategy than inflating the ego. Okay, so we want to give warmth and love and tune in and empathy and value them as a human versus inflating their ego, which is not going to, that bubble will burst, and it will burst in the wrong way. This journals, what they also indicated was that they actually surveyed 565 children in the Netherlands over the course of a year, and half along with parents, the year and a half along with parents, so for about 18 months, so children and parents. And the researchers show that one of their main statements is people with high self-esteem think they're as good as others, whereas narcissists think that they are better than others. I mean, this is powerful stuff. So if we praise our children too much, we encourage narcissism. We've got to be careful that we are inflating their egos versus teaching them empathy and building their self-esteem through warmth and empathy. And as they say, and I'm going to read that statement again from the what the researchers showed, with 565 children and the adults for over 18 months, is that people with high self-esteem think they're as good as others, whereas narcissists think that they are better than others. So there's the key. So here's the first strategy to help us achieve this goal. And here are some basic statements that you could say. And these are just samples, but they'll give you an idea, and then you could work out a bunch of your own. And I recommend you do that. Write them down somewhere. You could write them down in this coloring book, and it could be on the first page, and you could have it over there as a sort of constant reminder of the sorts of things you need to say to your child, or wherever you want. I mean, in your phone or however you want to do it. But write these down, memorize them, so you've got them on hand when you need them. Because kind of when we need them, if we don't have these things wired into our brain and the neural trees there, we're not going to draw on them. But whatever we've spent the time wiring into our brain with our mind, they're going to be on hand. If what we think about grows, we want them on hand. So when we need them, they're there. So we say the right thing. And that's the whole thing with life, parenting, all these things that I teach you, all the ideas. Don't think, oh, I've read the book, I'm going to remember. You've got to practice these things. You've got to wire these into your brain through mastering these, and then you can use these in your toolbox. And the way you do that is to use it for yourself and practice on yourself. So, that's going to help you then use it with your children. And I just want to say that some of you may be saying, hey, listen, I don't even have time to do anything for myself as a parent. I get that. I have 4 children, as I mentioned, and I've got 4 degrees, and I was studying while I was having babies, and I've been running a business ever since, and I understand busy, and I totally and utterly respect and validate what you're saying. And it's a matter of us. That's why I'm giving you tools and guidelines that, take some time for yourself, work on yourself, give yourself that space, take some time to practice getting good skills in place to help you when you need them. So not at the last minute when you kind of then reactive. So number 1, first strategy to help us are certain statements and guidelines. So I'm going to reread Adam Grant's one because I think it's fantastic. So you are special to me, not you deserve special treatment. Can you hear the difference there? The one is warmth, the one is empathy, the one is loving, the one is encouraging deep meaningful communication. And the other one is kind of saying, hey, you deserve something because you're better than someone else. The latter breeding narcissism, the first breeding self-esteem or growing. Okay, next statement. Everyone, similar statement, but listen to the difference. Everyone is special, including you. Versus, you are more special than other children. Or you are more special than whoever. See? So instead of using you are more special, you can say everyone is so special, including you. Okay? That breeds, it's the warmth. The other one is breeding the narcissism. Next statement. Everyone deserves good things in life. Not you deserve something extra in life. See? You bringing a child up thinking you deserve, that means everyone else doesn't deserve. There's something about me that's better than everyone else. There you've inflated the ego, leaning towards narcissism, versus everyone's amazing, everyone's unique, everyone deserves something special. Slight shift of language makes an enormous difference, especially if this is what the child is hearing all the time. So you want to, the good self-esteem statements you want to say all the time. When you say the others, you want to catch yourself and correct yourself. So we need to be observant about what we're saying to our children, even our adult children. So next one. We all have something we can learn from each other. Not, my child is a great example for other children to follow. Okay, this is really a cool one as well. So we all have something to learn from each other. There's something I can learn from you as my child. There's something you can learn from me as your mom. There's something you can learn from your friend. There's something you can learn from your sibling. Everyone can learn from each other. Versus, my child is a great example for other children to follow. It makes them, sets them apart as something different and something better than other people. That will be narcissism. Another one. Make sure that when you praise, so remember the amount of praise you give and also the quality of praise. Make sure that the praise that you give is for effort, not just for fixed qualities like being smart or athletic. So if someone's really good in getting good grades or really great athlete, be careful that you don't say, oh, you're an amazing athlete. Oh, those are fantastic grades. Hook that onto, wow, the effort that you put into this exam is incredible. You put hours into this exam. That's amazing. So you're praising the effort versus just the grade. And you could tag on it. So, that's a fantastic grade you got. But the effort's where you want what you want to praise, the work that they did to get there. And even if it was quick, it wasn't really necessarily time. Over time, it built up. It was the quality of what they put into that. That's what you want to praise. The hardworking, athlete, gosh, you spent hours practicing throwing that basketball. That is just fantastic. I see it played out in your game versus, that, oh, fantastic game, you did brilliantly. That's going to pop out your mouth first, but just make sure you follow up. You got there through that incredible hours that you spent in practicing throwing that ball over and over and over. Well done. Okay. And that also means that, if they didn't score 10 goals or if they didn't get that grade that maybe they were going for, you expected, it's the effort that's the most important thing. The score and the goal is just the side effect, the great benefit. The most important thing is that effort. And I know you know this, but is this inside of you so deep that it's coming out? Is this wired in that it's coming out, that you catch yourself? Because yes, you may think that the child will know that, but if you keep praising just the external or the result, the effort, and the effort's not sufficiently praised, the result is what they're wiring in. Whatever you think about the most will grow. Now, that related to this, praise for progress and attitude, if deserved. Okay? So praise for progress. Wow. You got 3 out of 10 for your spelling test last week. Now you got 4 out of 10. That's progress. That's great. Not, oh my gosh, you're still doing badly. Okay? Or I'm going to withhold and be withdrawn and hold back any communication. You're not saying that out loud. It's what you're holding back. They bring their test home and you, Next one home at 4 out of 10, that's very stressful. Just doing that makes my heart beat. Okay, so, hey, you made progress. Hey, okay, you got the same score, but you know what? Let's look together and see what we can do to improve that, to see how we can get, why. Let's look at why. Let's see how we can improve your spelling score for next time. But you know what? You tried. That's good. At least you're trying. That's the effort. What can we do more to help you? Things, that kind of stuff. And then like if they get 1 more point higher or something, you're improving at spelling. This is great. And if they say, I didn't get 10 out of 10, or little Johnny always gets 10 out of 10, I'm stupid. No, you're not stupid. You're learning. You're improving. What can we learn from this? If you didn't get 9 out of 10, but you got 5 out of 10 instead of 4 out of 10, or you got the same, what can we learn from this? Okay. Praise kids for kindness. If you see them being kind to a sibling, a friend, a dog, an uncle, an aunt, a granny, notice that, validate that, praise them. So that was such a nice thing to say to your friend there, or that was such a kind thing that you did for your brother. That's such a kind thing that you did for me. Thank you for doing that. When you acknowledge that grows resilience in the brain, that goes into their brain, that is great energy that's going to strengthen that network in the brain, and they'll do it more. And that's very healthy for the mind-brain-body connection and for deep, meaningful connections. The feedback loop that you set up is fantastic for your child's mental health. Praise a child for caring. If a child comes up to you and sees that you're tired and they sit next to you and they touch you and say, hey, Mom, can I do something for you? Hey, Mom, can I turn on your favorite TV program? Or, hey, Mom, can I make you a cup of tea? And it's like, even if it's the worst tea you've tasted, just that caring. Just praise them for that. Thank you for caring. Thank you for caring for your dog and giving them fresh, clean water because they're so hot. Empathy. Praise them for empathy. When they tune into someone else's pain and they notice it, praise them for it. When they're thankful to you, when they say, Mom, thanks for such a yummy dinner, and praise them for being thankful for that. Thank you for thanking me. I really appreciate that you appreciated me. And when they own their mistakes and say, oh, Mom, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I remember my eldest daughter used to call it a steak. Mom, I made a steak, like a piece of steak. I made a steak, and so praise them for owning up to that mistake. That's such a great skill to develop in a child. Praise them for helping around the house. In other words, praising them for doing those good quality character building type things. And that's so good, as I said, for the mind-brain body function and connection, all your psychoneurobiology. Okay, second thing. Let them fail and then praise the trying. It's so hard to let our kids fail. We want to bubble wrap them. We want to really focus around just, helicopter parenting. And there's a lot out there on helicopter parenting. I have a great section in here highlighting it, what to look for, what not to look for, and how to replace it with what I call safety net parenting. So how helicopters hovering over your child to make sure everything's okay, that they're safe, that they're protected, that they don't experience any failure or sadness and trying to fix everything. Not healthy. It's not realistic. It's not laying a foundation of strength for your child. It is masking instead of activating and releasing their natural resilience. Life is not like that. Life is not going to be one of hovering, and that will increase narcissism. I've got to always have someone making sure that everything just goes perfectly for me. And that will be narcissism. It will not build self-esteem. It's that trial and that crash and that support through the crash. And what do we learn from the crash? And then the building. That's what we need to put our children through, allow our children to go through. So, for example, helicopter parenting is this hovering, doing everything for your child, overseeing everything, making sure that they don't, if there's the slightest bit of discomfort, you remove that. The slightest bit of pain, oh, that person's wrong, let me comfort you. That's going to breed narcissism. Whereas if you can say, hey, think of a safety net. What is a safety net? Think of when you watch someone who's an acrobat and there's a safety net underneath and they're climbing up that ladder to an incredible height. And then they jump off and they swing from one swing to the next, and two people are catching each other and they're doing all these incredible things, or walking across a tightrope. And then maybe they fall, or they don't catch each other and they fall into the safety net. So that's what we want our children to do. We need to release them to climb the ladder of life, to swing on the swings of life and to fall. And maybe sometimes they fall 10 times before they get it. Get on that tightrope, fall 10, 20, 30, 40 times, but you are the safety net. What did we learn? What didn't work? I'm here, but I'm here when you've tried. And that's so much healthier. That builds self-esteem. You did it. You tried. Look there, you managed to get to the 3rd level and you didn't fall. And when you went too high, it was a bit, that was too high and you fell 10 times. But when we dropped down the level and you mastered that, you're not falling anymore. Now you can go a little bit higher. And see, you're learning from this all the time. You're teaching them that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fail. Fail is not a bad thing. Instead of saying, oh my gosh, I failed, I can't do this. And a child will do that if they're constantly told they've got to succeed, or only the success is being praised. If you say, hey, that's okay, what did we learn from this? That then builds their self-esteem, as opposed to getting angry with them or telling them that they're bad, or withholding your love or any kind of connection because they didn't achieve like they should have. That is no safety net. That's complete crash. So we can be hovering, we can remove this, we can have a safety net, or we can remove everything and then they crash and burn. And that's when they can develop traumatic coping responses, and those traumatic coping responses can breed narcissism. Very often, I've got to protect myself. I've got to fight everyone just to get to the top, to get some sort of level of recognition. Doesn't matter what other people say. I've got to make other people feel bad to make me feel good. That can come from us not going with the middle of the road, which is the safety net parenting. So when we hover or when we remove the support, both of those opposite extremes can breed narcissism. Whereas the safety net, where it's okay to learn, it's okay to make a mess, how can we do this together? Let's keep going, keep trying. It's the progress, it's the trying, that's the great thing. That helps to breed self-esteem. Just one more point that I want to make about the safety net parenting. When the helicopter parenting kind of creates an entitlement that I deserve to have everything done for me, and that the people in my life need to do everything for me. That's what helicopter parenting is going to breed. If you do this repeatedly, within 63 days, you've wired this into the brain. And if you don't adjust that, if this is how they're nurtured through their life, that means that by the time they get to adolescence and adulthood, they've created habits of this entitlement kind of attitude, that I deserve to have everything done for me, and I deserve for you to make me feel good, and you need to make me feel good. I'm entitled to that. If you don't make me feel good, I'm going to make you feel bad to make me feel good. That's the sort of thing that's wired in. So now as an adult, when this is crashing relationships, there's a lot of rewiring that needs to be done. It can be done, but a lot of people get hurt in the process. And those of you know what I'm talking about if you've had to deal with someone who has very strong narcissistic behaviors. Number 3. Number 2 was let them try and fail and praise the trying. The helicopter versus safety net parenting. Number 3, ban harsh criticism from your parenting. Ban it. Harsh criticism does not make someone stronger. It can break a person. It can make a person feel totally traumatized, and it can basically make a person want to give up, or it can make a person want to give up and withdraw, or it can make someone develop coping mechanisms that are harsh as well, where they see that the only way that they're going to function is if they achieve, and because it's so hard, they then transfer that pain of that harsh criticism that made them kind of force them to achieve. They then turn that becomes a narcissistic behavior pattern on others, where that harshness is then translated into, I'm going to make you feel bad about yourself to make me feel good about myself. So don't say things like, you are so difficult, you are so bossy, you are so lazy, you are so aggressive. That is very traumatizing. It's very harsh. There's no explanation attached to it. We should rather say, hey, you're being pretty difficult, and this is having all kinds of impact on your relationship with me, your siblings, my behavior, and difficult about these things. I'm seeing that you are showing up with these behavior patterns. When you do this, it's difficult for me. It's difficult for your siblings. This is why it's difficult. This is what it's doing. So you're not just saying you are being so. You are, that you are statement. Rather describe that the behaviors that you are showing are kind of difficult for all of us to live with, because this is how they're difficult for me. It makes it difficult for me to X, Y, and Z. It's making it difficult for your siblings because of this. It's making it difficult for your friends, making it difficult for me to hug you or whatever. So in other words, describe the pattern. And then at the same time say, look, I understand that this is not who you are. and you're showing up with this kind of behavior because of something going on in your life, but you know it is having an impact. But can I help you work out why these sort of behavior patterns are happening that are making it kind of difficult to be around you at this stage? So description, elaborate, instead of you are. End of story. That's harsh. That is going to lead to defensiveness. It's going to also crush a person's soul. And also that harsh, whatever that difficult misbehavior is a signal for you as a parent that you can help them recognize as a signal that something's going on. They aren't being difficult for no reason. There's a reason. And yes, they have to understand the impact. I'm not saying that you don't have to teach them the impact, but you can do that with a lot of description, not harsh criticism. You can rather describe the situation firmly, show the impact, and then say, hey, let's work out together why you have this signal of being difficult in X, Y, and Z situation, and this is why it's difficult. Let's work out why, and let's work out how we can get to the root of this and reconceptualize this into a better way of functioning that is going to be much easier for you and all of us, and you'll feel much happier too. That's the kind of, now exactly those steps of how to do that in detail, you'd use a neurocycle. I tell you in detail how to do that in this book. This creates, what this harsh criticism does is, well, okay, first of all, when I say ban harsh criticism, you want to rather explain why they did something wrong and give them a guide for next time. So I've said that. Okay, so just another point. Basically, harsh criticism creates an I'm not good enough, and this hurts. And this hurts the person. So it creates in them, I'm not good enough, this is hurting me, therefore the only way I can function and feel better about myself is to make people feel bad about themselves like I felt about myself. And then that pent-up energy from the pain and from the unsatisfied need in their development will come out in hurting others. So if you just harshly criticize, that's sort of the message that they are building inside of me, inside of themselves. I'm not good enough. This is painful. The only way I can function is either by withdrawing or by basically making other people feel hurt like me, so then I don't have to focus on my hurt, and their hurt makes me feel better about me. And it's all distorted because harsh criticism is distorted, and narcissism is a distorted response to patterns in childhood and to trauma and all kinds of things. We'll talk about trauma in a moment. Okay, number 4, don't punish a child for making a mistake. That will breed narcissism. It won't build self-esteem. It will make them feel like a failure, and repeatedly this could lead to the coping mechanism of, I need to make other people feel like a failure. Like in the previous one, I need to harshly criticize other people to make them feel bad so I can make myself feel good. I need to criticize others and make them feel like a failure in order to make myself feel good. And these are the things that narcissism does to other people. It makes them feel bad about themselves. Okay, and the worse that a person feels about themselves, the more that the person with that narcissistic coping mechanism will then boost their own ego and inflate their ego, and it's all distorted and everyone gets hurt. So this is why we want to be proactive and not letting with children, because today I'm talking about how we can help stop a child developing narcissistic behaviors and build self-esteem. So what we want to do is don't punish a child for making a mistake, which will make them feel like a failure, and this could lead to a coping mechanism of I need to make people feel like a failure to make myself feel good. Rather help them see the value in mistakes. See the value. Mistakes are great learning opportunities. You and I both know this. We need that grace as much. We need to give ourselves that grace as much as we give our children. Mistakes are valuable tools to learn from. So no punishment for mistakes. Turn them into lessons. Okay? We need to rather help them see the value in mistakes, the lessons to be learned, and how to correct the mistakes. Don't assume they know. They're a child. Trigger the responsibility to learn how to turn this around, but you're going to have to model that. You're going to have to teach as they're growing up. And even when they're adults and adolescents, we get better and better at learning from our mistakes. But me still as an adult, I value from getting the help when I've made a mistake, getting someone to help me see another side of what I could learn from the mistakes. Number 5, provide more opportunities for team building activities and collaboration within your family and with friends. This builds self-esteem. This will help your child see the value in others. When you collaborate and see, this one brings this to the party, and look how this one plays this game, and look how all of us together are having so much fun and sharing, and whether it's through games or whether it's through discussions or whether it's through reading a book together and talking about how great that book was and enjoying the camaraderie of the book or the movie you've watched. That's collaborative. That's deep meaning, creating deep, meaningful relationships. How did that movie make you feel? And did you have an experience like that? And wow, did you experience that? Wow, I didn't know you felt like that. Wow, I really, that's team building, collaboration, deep, meaningful relationships that build self-esteem, that helps a child see that everyone's having experiences and we all experience things differently, and some are sad and I can help, and sometimes they feel sad and I can help them with that sadness, and sometimes I feel sad and someone can help me with that sadness. That back and forth, that dyadic back and forth develops their deep pragmatic skills on how to be able to connect with each other. So good at self-esteem and so good at not building narcissism. So this will help your child see the value in others and how working with others can be great, fun, healthy, and deeply satisfying as it meets our need for deep, meaningful connections. Many people who battle with narcissistic type behavior think that they're the best and that they don't need anyone else and they can do it all on their own, and they don't value the contribution of others or don't believe another person can really speak into their lives or another person cares enough to actually hear how they feel. So they're on the defense mode all the time. Okay, so we don't want our child to get into that defense mode all the time, which will come from the harsh criticism and all the things that I've already said. So this collaborative thing really helps to teach them that they can value what others contribute and that others value what they can contribute. And, we need a lot of these experiences to build self-esteem and not to build narcissism. Number 6. As parents, we cannot 100% prevent trauma from happening to our children as much as we would like to not have it happen. Trauma will happen on a scale of 1 to 10, hopefully not too many of the 8, 9s, and 10s, which are the extreme ones, like, the abuse and extreme bullying and sexual and physical trauma and that kind of stuff, and relationship trauma. The 1, 2, 3 day-to-day stuff, that's daily struggles, that's going to happen as well. We can't prevent it. We can try as much as possible, but at the end of the day, we can't prevent it, so we have to deal with the impact, and that's what I deal with a lot. There's a whole section on trauma here with a very moving story about a child who was very sexually and physically abused, and when they're from a 3-month-old, and how, as a family, they got through this and whatever, and then I explain trauma and how to do a trauma neurocycle. In fact, this book, I deal with, a lot of these things I'm talking about in the podcast, I go into in detail. Like in the first half of the book, I help you understand how to do the neurocycle and help give you the words for explaining this to your children and what thoughts are and warning signals in simple language for 2 to 10-year-olds with the languaging adapted and so on. And then in the second part, I tell you how to actually do the neurocycle. In the third part, I cover things like trauma. And there's the trauma neurocycle, identity issues, self-esteem, etc. And there's an identity issue in neurocycle, social interactions like bullying and so on. And I give you, there's a story and there's a neurocycle for social interactions. Labels, what they do, how to deal with a neurocycle for dealing with labels, and sleep issues. So there's lots of practical ideas and advice in there. Okay, so we can't 100% prevent traumas happening. However, unresolved trauma, listen to me, unresolved trauma could breed narcissism, because unresolved trauma distorts experiences, and constant unresolved trauma can lead to very, very, very distorted reactions in a child's life. AKA when we see, the shootings that we see in this country, and we see the abuse that happens in life, and I'm not saying every unresolved trauma will lead to those extremes, but extreme unresolved trauma is certainly going to breed levels of narcissism, which can lead to all kinds of other things. So it's really important as parents that we do manage that we do manage unresolved trauma, and that is why really you need to get your hands on this book so that you can understand how to recognize the signs of trauma and how to manage the unresolved trauma. We're also adding in cycles into the Neurocycle app to help parents help their children with all these issues as well. And there's specific neurocycles, additional ones inside the app that we'll be releasing close to the release of the book to help you as well. So this is where the neurocycle comes in, that you can learn to recognize the signals and help your child recognize the signals of unresolved trauma, what that looks like in how they feel, in their body, in their behaviors, in their perspectives, and how to work through, once you've gathered awareness, how to reflect on understanding how this is showing up in my life, and capturing that all to try and dig down deep and see what are all the memories, what is the root, what's involved in this. And then that wow moment of step number 4 in the neurocycle of, okay, this has happened. What can I do about this? And then the active reach to ground and anchor you and grow the positive, healthy new thought tree. And this doesn't, as we know, as I say so often, this is not going to be resolved with one neurocycle, with one sitting down, with one therapeutic intervention. This is over time. We have to understand that the neurocycle is clinically worked out as a time frame that works within a time frame. Rewiring the brain takes time. So it's going to be multiple of these cycles, and that's why mind management is a lifestyle. And this is why I've made suggestions in previous podcasts, but if you haven't yet heard it, create a neurocycle section in your house. So when you are working through issues, it's this beautiful section with a little bench or a chair and your neurocycle book and your brainy and your coloring book and your pencils and your crayons and a whiteboard or a blackboard or whatever, paint on the wall, where you go to that area that you can then work through issues. So if you have found yourself being too harsh on your child and criticizing your child harshly, I want to say to you, it's okay. Go listen to the Messy Parenting podcast. It's okay. Give yourself grace. I've done it. Own it. Own your mistake. Just doing that is going to empower you to get power over that pattern of potentially you were harshly criticized and it's wired in. So you need to do the work of recognizing where it comes from, and you do need to do the neurocycle. So you need to go to the neurocycle corner or the neurocycle beautiful area in your house, a happy, safe space where you can then work through where your harsh criticism, messy parenting has come from, giving yourself the permission. It's okay to be a mess, but now you're learning to manage it. And from there, you can then help reframe. And your active reaches would be to find alternative statements. So instead of falling into the pattern of the harsh criticism or the ways that you've potentially been breeding narcissism in your child, you now have your active reaches to practice these new statements and these things that I've shared with you. So all in all, you collaboratively help improve your mental health together. Well, thank you for joining me today. I hope this has helped you. Share this episode with your friends and family. We all need to help each other. It's going to be a way better world when we're all managing our mind more effectively and helping each other as parents to help make sure we build our children's self-esteem and not narcissistic tendencies and behaviors in our children. And we can do this. We can help each other. So share this with others. Talk about it. Give me a feedback. Go and rate it on iTunes and on the App Store and wherever you listen to podcasts. Go and rate this, because the more ratings I get, the more I can bring you this information. And I really appreciate that. And thank you for joining me today. And I look forward to seeing you next time.